Welcome to Braid's very first video blog. We are in Oakland tonight at the grand opening of the Foster Youth Museum, which is created by our friends at California Youth Connection and the Youth Training Project. So the museum has been recreated and it's on display tonight in a fancy gallery in Oakland.
Welcome to the Lost Childhood Museum. Our childhood museum is broken into 5 main sections. One is developmental disturbance. The second one is institutionalized. The third one is powerless. And the fourth one is lost. And the fifth one is transitioning into a hope. Many youth are actually going off to college. So it's very powerful. And please check it out. We're here on Monday.
And I am the co-director of the Foster Youth Museum, and I am the director of training at California Youth Connection, and I'm really, really excited to have you all here this evening. I think probably every single person who's important to me in the field of child welfare and in the general community is here tonight, and I just can't thank you enough. So let me tell you a little bit about the story of the Foster Youth Museum if you haven't heard it already. I'll make it extremely brief, and we have a couple of speakers and then some information to share, and then we'll send you back out to the museum. So the museum is a product of about 8 former foster youth who got together about 8 years ago to write curriculum to support and to write curriculum for child welfare supervisors. And we were going to train those child welfare supervisors on how to teach or how to do good social work with teenagers. And what kept happening in this group of 8, which I should tell you a little bit about this prestigious group of 8, because we were training supervisors, we knew that we needed to actually have folks who had had a little distance from foster care. Normally the Youth Training Project trains current and former foster youth under age 25. To write curriculum and to deliver it to social workers. And this time we brought together folks who had been out of care for a number of years. So we had a lawyer, we had an actual child welfare supervisor, both of those women are here tonight. We had a businesswoman from Los Angeles. We had a recent graduate from Stanford University. We had a college student from UC Berkeley. We had a Guardian Scholar from Orange County. And we had a budding film producer. And what kept happening in this group of 8 was, as we were writing this curriculum, people kept saying, you know what, I have something at home from foster care that I could pull out to help demonstrate this idea we're trying to get across. And after I was hearing this 4 or 5 times, I started thinking, why don't we just go ahead and collect all these items together and create a new learning modality, and we'll make it a traveling museum. And that's where we're at today. So what's amazing was the collaboration that happened amongst us. So we started pulling items out of our own personal lives, and I tell you about the prestigiousness and the age of the curriculum developers to say there were people in their late 20s and 30s and even late 30s who still had artifacts from foster care in their being, in their homes. They still had it in storage. They were still carrying it around. That's how intense foster care impacts you, even when you're a lawyer, even when you're a supervisor, even when you're a fantastic businesswoman, even when you're a Stanford graduate. Foster care gets deep inside, and it's a part of you no matter where you go. So we put these items together, and it's been a lot of iterations. We are so fortunate that we had the opportunity to get some funding from a couple of foundations. The Zellerbach Family Foundation is here tonight. I want to thank them deeply. And they helped us in different ways along probably the last 5 years and really made a difference from where this museum started, which was like items on top of cardboard boxes from tablecloths that we all took from our own apartments. And now we're in these beautiful vitrines on Duvetine and in this fancy gallery, and really it's an amazing journey. Speaking of journeys, we want to actually share the mic a little bit with a couple of people. Both have items in the museum tonight. Our first speaker is Ide Kuza, and she's going to just tell you a little bit about her items and her experience. First, I just wanted to thank Jamie. I had the pleasure of being here Thursday night, and I didn't think I was going to cry, but now I know that that's not true, so I won't pretend this time. But Jamie came to me early on in this process, and the first item that I contributed to the museum is not here, but it was a sweatshirt that we hand-painted on Foster Youth Connection. I was blessed enough to be chosen by some adult supporters to be a founding member of California Youth Connection, and at that time it was Foster Youth Connection. And as Jamie said, the experience of foster care stays in your heart, but also the experience of people believing in you and holding the strength for you when you don't have it also stays in your heart and in your spirit. And I have the honor of representing Transformation and Hope, and I'm holding my daughter at 19 as she's holding my grandson. It's her son, but more importantly, my grandson. As he's just a couple of days old, and my daughter's now in law school. But what I just want to share as you go through this museum, I get to represent Transformation and Hope because people had hope for me when I didn't have hope for myself. People had strength for me when I did not even know what resilience meant. And people believed in my life when I really thought that all I could do in order to end the pain was end my life. So I just really ask as you walk through this museum, and I know it's difficult because there's a lot of people, but to really hold love and hope for every single child who's in the foster care system. Some, maybe you can't see it at the surface, but in their spirit, in their heart, is the opportunity for them to succeed because they know when you believe in them. Really holding that hope for them, we feel it. And we know when you don't believe in us. And so it's just incredible that you're here. The fact that you're here means that you hold hope for all of the young people. And I just want to honor every single CYC member, every single CYC staff who's in this room today. You're doing this work every day, and I'm just grateful for the legacy that you continue to carry on. So thank you very much.
I'm Jennifer Rodriguez, and I also have items in this museum, and I had the honor of working with Jamie as one of the original curricula developers way back in the day. And even though Jamie gives us credit as sort of coming up with the idea that we had items in our home, it was really Jamie's creative genius, and the fact that she has always had a different way of looking at the experiences that we all have and figuring out how to translate those to folks who don't have the exposure that some of us have to child welfare issues. And so it's really been an honor, one of the greatest honors of my life, to be able to work with you, Jamie. One of the things that's so significant to me about this museum is that I would say that I spent most of my childhood feeling really invisible. Even before I came into care, I felt like the abuse that was happening in my home and the experience of growing up with a mom who was mentally ill and a dad who was incarcerated, that people saw it, but they didn't really ever see it. They didn't see the fear that I lived with every night as I was scared of my own mother. They didn't see the hope that I had that some adult would come in and rescue me from the situation that was happening in my home. And they definitely didn't see the wounds that were left, not always physical, but sometimes physical, and how those impacted my behavior on a day-to-day basis. And I'd like to tell you that once I came into foster care that invisibility stopped, but it didn't. It just really changed. In foster care, I was seen, But I wasn't seen for any of the things that were really important to me. The things that I wanted folks in the system to see were how deeply I wanted to connect and belong to other people, how much I wanted a family. And instead what people saw was they saw the behavioral issues, they saw my outside sort of cries for loneliness and help. And so I ended up in institutional care for nearly my entire time in foster care. And one of the first items that I donated to the museum was a picture that I had of another young girl. I think she was 9 or 10 at the time. Her name was Jessica. And one of the things that would happen in every single group home that I would go into is that we would instantly form a family. And inevitably, I'd always be the mother. So Jessica was my daughter. And I took care of Jessica as if she was my daughter because we didn't have anybody else. And this is what children do when they don't have the most basic and important need, when they don't have a family, they create it in any way, shape, or form possible. And I always think about Jessica because she was too little to live in a setting where she was cared by shift caregivers. And she desperately wanted a mother. And me as a 12-year-old, I'm all she got at that time. And I wasn't much of a mom. I was coming in 3 years off the street. I was coming in with no ability to take care of myself, let alone somebody else. But to me, the items that I have in this museum, they all go with that theme, everything that I've shared. On this side, my father's letters that he wrote to me while he was incarcerated are here. And that's another way. My father was the only individual in the world who thought I was special and who loved me while I was in care. And because he wasn't a legal permanency option in care, people acted as if our relationship didn't exist. And I lived in facilities where he could only make collect calls to me. I couldn't receive collect calls because we had payphones. Those existed then. And so for all of those years, the only person in the world who I felt like loved me, I had no access to, and so I had to get the little shreds of sort of love and nurturance off these letters that he would write to me. And he died shortly after getting released when I was 21, and sort of with him, that dream that I had of ever having a family also died. But the second half to my story is on the other side, where there are pictures of my children. I now am mother to 2 beautiful children, and they represent what I think is the hope that we all have growing up in foster care, which is that our children will have an entirely different story. And one of the things that I'll just share with you is that part of the way that my children have had a different story is that Jamie and Ida and a number of I have very carefully and intentionally built a family for my children so that they actually have no idea that they don't have biological aunties or uncles or grandparents. They don't know that we're all related by love, and that's the biggest gift that I can give to my children, and that's the legacy, is that my children will have an entirely different life and different story, and they know vaguely that mommy lived at some place that was kind of like a daycare that nobody ever comes to pick you up at, but that's all that means to them. It doesn't mean anything more because I'm able to meet their needs, their family is able to meet their needs, and we built that. And that for me is the story of hope and resilience, is that hopefully I'm the generation that it ended at, and my children have an entirely different story and experience. And the last thing I will say to you is that the visibility of this makes me feel happy, because I do feel like all of the things, the reasons that I wanted to be invisible and then the ways that I didn't want to be invisible are shown here in this museum tonight. And my hope, what I've dedicated my career to, is hoping that at one point this museum will still exist, except it will be a historical museum where we will no longer actually know what any of these things mean. We'll have to read the cards to tell that story. So I know that's my hope, is that this museum grows, but that it becomes something different than a chance to make the shadow children who are still out there, probably living blocks away, visible. So I appreciate you all being here tonight, and really, like Ida said, honoring, and definitely honoring all the young people who continue to elevate that voice and make sure that the kids who are in here, that they really are visible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ida and Jennifer, as always, for being part of the community and speaking the voice that is needed. I want to just also thank a few other people. I mentioned that I'm the co-director of the Foster Youth Museum. The other co-director is Jeannie Yoon. Where are you? Give a holler. So I'm the one that stands up in front of people, and Jeannie Yoon is the one that balances 10,000 details. And I can tell you we spent about $172 on screws. So that tells you how many, that's just one little tiny thing that happened connected to this installation. So you can imagine how many details she has. So back in the day, it was an idea, and folks brought things and we put them on tables with tablecloths. And then we got some support from the Zellerbach Family Foundation, and we got a chance to work with the amazing, fantastic Annie Gardner from Green Penguin Communications, who's here tonight. And Annie is a marketing genius and also just filled with the biggest love ever. And I think she donates probably 3 hours for every hour that we pay her for, which is amazing and totally necessary. After another year of funding, Annie said, let's take this up to the, well, we all said it together, let's go to the next level. And she found an amazing museum studies professor, Marjorie Schwartzer. She's here tonight. Where are you? Somewhere? Marjorie Schwartzer is a museum studies professor at USF. And she actually happens to be my actual next door neighbor. So that's the crazy, funny story about Oakland life. And she brought in a lot of ideas. We originally thought, we're so cool, we've got these items, everyone cries when they see it, people are moved to do things, let's get it into a museum. And so I didn't realize it takes 5 years to do that, and like a whole bunch of work. So Marjorie gently let us know that and did work with us for a year and introduced us to a million museum consultants who also volunteered their time. And then she introduced us to a really amazing man named Ray Busolari, who is here somewhere. Ray is our guest curator. He's the one that took us from tabletop to display gallery style. He is also the one that said, you know, I can take some pictures. And I was like, sure you can, so can I. But, hello. I mean, he's a deeply phenomenal photographer, and his stuff sells for thousands of dollars, hello. And he fell in love with us, and we fell in love with him, and now he's our consultant helping us bring the museum to the next level too. We can't thank Ray enough for his work. There are dozens of former foster youth who have contributed to the museum, who have helped carry things, unload things, pack things, who have asked their friends to give things. And the great thing about community organizers is that when we actually need something, we can put a call out and we actually get them. So most of the things in this museum really are artifacts from foster care. We have a few artistic representations and of course the beautiful photographs from Ray. But I really can't thank enough all the former foster youth who have contributed to the museum, so let's give them a big shout out as well. And it would be inappropriate if I didn't acknowledge the executive director, Joseph Teets, Dr. Joseph Teets, who's a wonderful boss, and I think he's here and he brought his whole family as well. And I also want to acknowledge the CYC staff, so thank you staff for helping, pouring drinks, taking out staff, yada yada. Last thing. All right, so this is the very first public exhibition of the Lost Childhoods exhibition. We have multiple exhibits. We have one on homelessness that we actually just rolled out a couple weeks ago, and it will show again in April. But this is the first public exhibition, and over 800 people came last night from First Friday and rolled through these doors. And of that 800, I think about 7 knew the museum existed. So many people came through here. And let me just tell you, we have a vision. Our vision is that we want to get the exhibit in every community in California. We want to get the exhibit in every community in California because there are over 50,000 foster youth in California right now. And there's over 1,500 in Alameda County right now. Every year, 4,000 foster youth emancipate from care without enough. And we want to say the issue of foster care is not just a child welfare issue. It's not just a government issue. It's all of our issues. And everyone here has been touched by foster youth, whether you know it or not. I asked somebody who brought their son last night, have you ever met a foster youth? And he said no, and his dad said you probably have. And he's right. So here's where you can be a part of it. There's 3 ways. We have these amazing, beautiful photographs that Ray has taken and printed for us, and we've actually sold the first print. We have 5 signed editions of these archival print photographs signed by the author, signed by the artist, that are for sale. So the first one has already sold. We have a second one that's up for $750. We have 3 and 4 and 5 that are up for $500. And we also have opportunities for you, if you're not in that price range, to buy a raffle ticket, to buy a version of the museum signature photograph over here. Those are $1 a ticket plus, or $6 or $5. And we have some wonderful t-shirts. And the t-shirts, some of them have this iconic bear, which I really almost gave a thumbs down to. But it's interesting who wants to wear that, and then people are going to ask you, what's that about? And then you get to talk to them about turning scars into strength in the Foster Youth Museum. So there's multiple ways you can give. 1, 2, 3. There's also a plastic case over here. Anthony, can you hold that up? A plastic case here. It's suitable for cash. It's suitable for checks. And it's suitable for your contribution. So we really want to ask you if you can make a meaningful donation tonight to help the museum move forward in California. We'd love to find a benefactor who has a wealth of resources, who falls in love with us and funds us forever. But until then, as a community, we need to move it forward. So that's all I have to say tonight. I want to thank you for being here. Please enjoy some food and the museum, and we'll be around to talk. And thank you so much.